Hello, it's CJ Miller. I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana. Across the Red River is beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana. And I always want to invite you to come check us out. This is the view from my window that kind of inspired one of my paintings that I have on the wall. So, yeah. And it's just got me thinking about my relationship with art uh, over the course of my life. So I'm going to talk about that. No, we have an art walk coming up soon, and I may go check that out. An art walk is kind of like, like in New Orleans, how you have like some places like um, Lafitte Square or something like that, where or just various places where people have uh, their art in the French Market or whatever, and they'll have some art and everything along with with their produce to sell and things like that. Just um, anybody anywhere basically busking art on the street. Well, so we do that about once a month here in downtown Shreveport. Just kind of like open it up. We can they work with different people that have like uh, areas in their buildings that they could open up and let people bring in. And this is going to be a smaller venue. Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's larger, and it kind of changes location. And it's changed over the years, much like my relationship with art. And these are some that I've done. I'm keeping these, but I've actually sold some. This one though is represents rain on a window pane that's kind of reflecting uh, from the view that we saw back there. And this is just kind of like uh, not a picture perfect representation of it, but from that particular vantage point, that's where I looking kind of upward through that one pane, looking at the window below that. There's a screen, and the screen kind of obstructed my view of the effect that I wanted. So I just kind of focused in on that one particular pane of glass as I was painting this. I think it did all right, but I had fun painting it. That's the thing. Remember when I did these, I made videos of my painting them, and I did them paintings in progress, a series that I did of them, and I really enjoyed it. And it's reminding me, I guess, I don't know, that when I was much younger, kind of diving into exploratory art, I say when I was in my teens, uh, you know, elementary school. Yeah, everybody does art in elementary school, but yeah, I used to do things for like, I would paint decor for our Halloween dances and stuff in middle school or whatever. And I hardly ever went to anything like that though. Like this one year I actually did. I did like almost all of the design for the Halloween dance, and then just did not go because I was kind of a social recluse at the time. I was a kind of a I don't know. We moved around so much, and I just had trouble finding my place with other children. And middle school is a cruel time of life anyway, right? But yeah. Then into my 20s, I had like some troubled years, and once I straightened those out, I had some more troubled years of a different type. But I would remember being in my 20s and my 30s or whatever, and every once in a while just getting a hold of some art supplies and trying to explore art. And like, I don't know, would look at something and try to create lighthouses. I love to paint lighthouses. I think this kind of reminds me of some of my earlier lighthouse paintings, because this rock or whatever really would be like a hill with a lighthouse off of a cliff or something like that. I don't know why lighthouses, but I can tell you that no matter what I did, and sometimes I would do a painting for a stage play. This one time we were doing a play, and um, the director of the play charged me with doing some of the art. And one of the main pieces was a set piece. It was a large canvas that had to be framed and everything. And I was charged with doing that painting. And the problem with my mood where I was in that time of life, I had such inward sadness that couldn't get out that I could not make an upbeat, light-hearted, pretty painting no matter what I did, no matter what I did. And I'm talking about, I love to do nature and I love to do, anything like that. But it wasn't, there was always, like it wasn't like a nice little rainstorm. This wouldn't be a rainstorm. There would be like really, really dark clouds and there would be lightning and thunder and destruction, in the painting that I would paint, just, I would paint something of a water scene, and there'd be like some massive water spout. I think earlier on, way back in my YouTube, you may be able to find some of that before I gave them away. I think I still had one or two of those pieces as I was kind of like transitioning. I was, just purging those things out, yeah, I did this massive water spout, and then I thought it'd be funny and cheeky. As like I could give it away to somebody and tell them to put it in their bathroom, and they can pretend like when they're, uh, you know, urinating in the bathroom that they're creating this massive water spout in their bathroom or something, So it's something funny like that. But the truth is, I had all these unresolved inner feelings that I just didn't know how to, get out, and thankfully over time, I have, I don't know, what I found was a balance. I found a lot of gratitude and happiness and good things, beautiful, wonderful things to balance some of that sadness and anger that's inside, that we all have. I don't think there was an imbalance inside of those emotions that I had, but I feel like that there was I feel like on the inside there was an imbalance of an outlet. We always have to put up that positive, happy face, especially like when we're in recovery and we're trying to be a good example to the world. And sometimes the better example is to say, hey, you know what? I do still struggle. I still do have, uh, you know, uh, my past traumas that I get to work through and deal with. And some of those revisit through memory from time to time, and everything. But what I don't let it do is I don't let it ruin my art. Uh, I have a kind of I have a style that lends itself to kind of a bizarre, surreal, expressionist kind of view, um, but that's because I really love, Vinnie Van Gogh and pattern a lot of my style after what he's done. And I've been compared to him, there are people who look at stuff and it's like, well, kind of, sometimes not. Sometimes people look at it and like this one. It's just fun. I think, yeah, this is just something that can be anything that you look at it. And so it's kind of cool. And I'm looking at it through my phone, and as I'm talking and my hand moves and shakes and everything like that, sometimes it looks like the three little flowers or bushes or trees or whatever. It kind of looks like they're kind of moving within the background real subtly. It's just an effect that I have where the phone shakes when I move, when I breathe or I move or something like that. It's kind of cool. So, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I just didn't, for a long time, I just didn't do anything, And then I would do something, and then I would be like, it's basically me just taking all this negative stuff and putting it on the paper in some sort of drawing that I did or something like that. And once it was there, then it was like I would just ball it up and throw it away. I'm done with it. But there was never a way for me to share the art. And then I started doing more whimsical, funny, even even I did this one painting called The Phantom of the Sea, and it was a boat out on the sea, like a large vessel, uh, with cross trees and uh, sails and everything like that. But it's being overtaken by high tide and waves and everything crashing up against it, and so that so much so that you could hardly see it off in the distance. And I called it The Phantom of the Sea. Now that was very bright and peppy, even though it was a kind of a morose theme when you think about just a ship being tossed about. But it was a metaphor for life. Sometimes life is rocky like that. And if you just paint something that's just a perfectly serene picture of water, like this part right here, it's nice and glassy and reflective of what's going on above it. But I find what's happening over here, where these ripples are kind of like troubling the water as it gets closer to the bank and everything, I find that more interesting to look at than what's going on over there in the painting. So uh, so yeah, just to paint something that is just perfectly Norman Rockwell, beautiful house off in the distance and nothing happening. That's nice and it's decorative, but it doesn't really tell a story to me. A story means that whatever is serene has a happening, has a movement, has a growth, has there's something happening. And just a picture of a house in a field doesn't really tell me much of anything. But if you put a house in a field off in the distance, and then that famous painting of the young girl where she's lame, but she's fallen down, and so she's kind of military crawling in her dress back towards the house, reaching back towards the house. That's a story of striving to get a goal, and even if she's going to end up reaching out and getting some help, and someone's going to help her get to the house or something like that. I mean, I don't know if you know that painting that I'm talking about. It's very famous, and it's a and the artist was inspired to paint her. And I don't know, was it Magritte? I don't know. It was someone famous, and it was a famous painting. But yeah, that is a story. That's more of a story to me than just a house off in the distance. That's why whenever I paint something, I try to paint something where there's motion, there's juxtaposition. There's a focal point here, and it could be spiraling. There's a focal point here, and then going off into the distance, there's a point. There's this almost a single point of focus, but could be more, depending upon this one. As simple as it is, just blended colors in the back, with some plants or flowers or trees or something in the foreground. There's so much more to this one, and I want to talk about it, but I'm just not going to, because I don't want to superimpose my impression that I didn't actually get until after it was finished and hanging on the wall, and I looked at it frequently, and I was like, this reminds me of some things. I don't want to superimpose that to viewers of my YouTube channel when I share it and they see it, because they're really the only ones that are going to see it until my book comes out. That is, but anyway, because these are going in my book. I haven't let me talk about that. I haven't stopped writing my book. I really thought that I was going to get back from my cruise a couple of months ago, and I really thought what I was going to do is just sit down and just discipline myself into learning how to use that Amazon, um, software to learn to self-publish what I had written and what I was formatting. And then I realized, hey, I'm not really finished with the writing, and I'm not finished with, and really, what I'm not finished with uh, is the illustration, the painting, the photography that I want to do. And there's still more to this story to tell. As of right now, it's I've got about 120 pages of written poetry, which is just fine. Uh, with the speckle of a, painting here or there, just kind of like going through it. But I really want it to be a little bit more uh, visual than it is, because my idea is that it's not just a book of poetry that you're just going to have out or something like that. And okay, there's one or two things, maybe they're interesting. And then you look, because people don't really read poetry, It's like people, but that's not true. Some people really do read poetry. I think Meryl Streep, the actress, she's a devout uh, connoisseur of poetry. Just the artistically minded people. They'll read poetry, but just in general, people, if they read, they're reading stories, they're reading novels, action, romance, horror, uh, and and they're reading it on tablets. They're not buying the books to have on their bookshelf that much anymore. I remember when that was a thing. People would have, like I did since I was a little kid. Wherever, and I would lose my books when I moved in my moving about and my being nomadic, and in my cycle of building up some things and then losing it and then building it back up again, and that whole thing that goes along with being an addicted person without recovery. You just get a house, and then what happens is, uh, for someone like me, is I would build it up, and then I would like wreck my life and find myself uh, completely, you know, cut off from everything, and all my bridges burned, and I'd have to find some sort of way to start all over again. But one of the first things I always did was I started to collect some of the books that I like, um, and that was always like, I've got more books in my room on my shelf than I can put on the shelf that I want to store them. So I'm going to have to rethink where I'm keeping those books, actually, because I still do. I still buy books, paperback books from, like you know Abe Books, or thrift books or whatever. Just books that are not even really in print sometimes. Uh, that if I like them, I'll get them or whatever. So yeah, but a lot of people just don't have that. They don't have that. That coffee table book that you have, that people come over and they can flip through it, and they can read a piece of poetry here, or read a an article here, and then really what's going on is the illustrations within the leaflets. It's almost like a child's book for adults, that coffee table book or whatever. And it could be about lighthouses of the world. you know it could be about this coffee table book that people used to have a stack of them. It could be about art, their favorite famous neoclassical art pieces or something like that. It could be about that. It could be about um, it could be, for the men that do a lot of construction, and they're really into that kind of stuff. Then the coffee table books could have been part of the that could be home improvement books, the large home improvement books that you used to buy in the set, and have them on your coffee table to flip through or different places. I think that started out, I think it was Bob Vila, he was selling these on TV. And there was one, it was kitchens and bathrooms. And there was like five or six of them, different volumes of it, and they were selling. So that would qualify as, in some houses as, coffee table literature, that kind of stuff, just something to glance through in a parlor. That's the kind of book that I'm talking about, creating. And you can't really experience it in the way that I want it to be experienced, um, on on a digital device. I suppose you could, um, but and I suppose the novelty of it is that I could take a collection of old digital. I can just you know uh, find these devices and then load it with nothing but pages of my book and send it out. And so you have a digital coffee table book where you turn it on, kind of like your photo album, your uh, digital photo frame or whatever. But I don't want to do that. I mean, I just you could do that. You could sell books in a digital thing, but why would people do that when they could just download it to their device and have their personal experience with the book? But that's not the type of experience that I'm trying to create this first time out. I really want my book to be on coffee tables, on desk, on bookshelves, for people to pick up and they can just kind of randomly flip through and you don't have to look at it and follow a catharsis, even though within the pages of the poetry, there's a catharsis. Some of these things that I've written uh, reach all the way back to my teenage years. You know, uh, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I have a recall of some of those things that I've written, and I've written modern versions of them for this book. But I also realize that I'm not finished um, with editing the written parts of it, and I certainly want to include a lot more um, painting and photography and visual representation. Um, I don't know. I just do. Uh, I think I'm inspired by not only uh, the artists that I liked, the Rembrandts, um, the Van Goghs, the Da Vinci's, that kind of, all that kind of big stuff that we can say that make us seem intelligent. Yay! But I also want to really be inspired by in this work. I want to see if I can branch out and have a variation of style that from anything that uh, that I would want to explore. Uh, so it's not yet complete. I'm still working on it, and um, the written part of it, mostly, yeah. There's some things that I want to add to it, but mostly the poetry is complete. It's the visual stuff that I want to work on, and it's just, what can I say? It's not done until it's done. So I don't talk about it as much because when I had a firm plan, a very specific thing that I was going to do with this book. When I came back last February, I was going to get right to it, but then I realized, I'm not done. I'm not done with it. And I mean, I took like a lot of photos, drew a lot of inspiration, and basically kind of reinvigorated that part of me that wants to explore other means of visual creativity. Like I want to change up my style of painting. I want to change up some of my subject matter too. I want to, just have there be a continuity, but also, yeah, like just explore a lot more than what's currently explored in the book as it's written and saved in my laptop right now. So, but that's why I just haven't like rushed to put it out there. And I am going back to Miami early 2027, and I'm gonna go do some more exploring and everything, and I'm gonna bring back even some more inspiration on that. So yeah, I just, as much as I'm in a rush to really hurry up and get this done, I'm really not anymore. I just I want it to be done well, and I want it to be done right, and I want it to be that book that I want it to be a good product also. Not only do I want it to be a good representation of you know my abstract written word and my paintings and my photography that I'm going to do and include and all that kind of whatever. I really want it to be a good product. You know, I want it to be a well put together. Um, as far as content goes, I want the content to be a good product so that you'd have it on your coffee table. You know, and then in the midst of all this, when you flip through it, hopefully you'll come across something that'll give you uh, a reason for consideration on some of your thoughts. Because some of the topics in there are not topical. Some of them in there are things that we still grapple with, But I also want to balance the heaviness of it with a lot of lightheartedness of it. So, yeah, because the title of the book, and I always knew when I was writing poetry from like being a little kid writing poetry, really, but like elementary school. I would write something here or there or something like that. And so and I'm not talking about your basic haiku. I mean, I'm talking about, your poems or whatever. And I would try with couplets and different things, but I don't know. I don't know. I would write poetry without even knowing that I was writing poetry or what I was writing in a free form kind of style. And because it's what I had, because my sister, she was given diaries. She could write in a diary if she wanted to. I didn't have that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that boys could keep a diary or that boys could keep a journal if you want to do that. I didn't know that. Uh, you know. So what I had instead of that type of journaling kind of situation, or instead of the vlogging that I do now, what I had was uh, creative writing. That's what I had. I would write stories and I would work out my issues through story writing and poetry writing and things like that. Uh, and yay, so there's that. Um, so started writing poetry from a very young age, but I guess it was in my, and I thought I was going to be a writer at some point, but it was in my early 20s that I was like, running around with a group called the Wandering Minstrel Theaters, or the Wandering Minstrel Players at the Wandering Minstrel Theater. There was a Wandering Minstrel Theater and the Wandering Minstrel Players. That was us. And we put on plays. I would have chosen a different name because I don't care for the connotation of minstrel show as we know them now. Uh, but in American minstrels, where they did the whole blackface. And so we didn't do that. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the kind of minstrels. Minstrel players go all the way back to pre America, the 14, 15, 1600s, pre-Renaissance medieval time. You get your wandering minstrels and troubadours and things like that, So it was, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the whole Al Jolson, blackface kind of thing. I would never, but but I would have chosen a different name. But around that time, I started writing more, being more a creative for creative input. I didn't always get credit. I wrote for the newsletter, and then I gave creative input and notes for the writing that went into our plays that we did. Although there was the playwright, Thomas Buckner was his name, and his name went on the plays because he did the bulk of the writing, and it was the brand. It was on brand that he would do that, and people really came to see what he was writing and what he did. And it really was his project that he just kind of allowed us to all be a part of. It felt that way, and it was that way, and I was on board with it. I was totally okay with it. And I was doing a lot of writing, and then it's that around that point I realized, I'm going to write uh, a book of poetry, and that's going to be the first thing I'm going to do, because I always, I had it, all figured out. And what I was waiting to do is I was waiting to experience some life, to have something to reflect upon. I know that people can write at any time in their life. Ali Sheedy wrote a children's book when she was before she was an actress. She was a child author. Ali Sheedy, the actress, from Breakfast Club, War Games. That actress, she wrote a book. She was a best-selling writer, I think, as a child. And so, yay. Um, but for me, I just felt like, well, I need to live life, have something to reflect upon, have something to say, uh, you know, uh, so that I can balance all this day to day change that I'm going through, and that I was going through. And I see we all go through change all the time anyway. But I want to, because all I could do was really reflect on, the consistency of change. Everything is constantly changing. I'm in a constant state of change. Everything, always. Really, what I didn't know was that I was lacking stability. And that's what I was waiting to get a hold of. I was waiting to get some stability and anchor uh, for that change to be put down, you know, upon, so that there could be some sort of meaning to the change. And that's what I was waiting for when it came to being able to write the poetry. And it's there, and it is basically, just anything and everything in life. It's a big study in my personal worldview. That's all it means. I don't want to turn in a book that's all about, all this poetry about here's me, me. I can write about me all damn day long. Nobody is gonna care about what's going on inside of me. Now, if I can reflect to the things that go on in my community, in my world, in my life as I see it, that's outward, right, what I'm observing from the outside, then maybe that's something that people can identify with, you know, uh, regardless of where the vantage point is coming from these eyes and this ears, and the way that this mouth works with the world and everything. Maybe that's something that people can relate to and communicate with, but no one's really going to be interested in just, 150 pages of pictures and poetry about me when I'm nobody of historical significance or cultural significance or anything like that. So it's better, if I'm going to write and if I'm going to make a connection, then what I have to do is I have to reach out, and the conversation cannot be all about what I'm saying. The conversation has to be about what the reader is saying. I need it needs to be less about my point of view, and it needs to be more about questioning the reader's point of view. And uh, that's the type of art and poetry that I want to work towards. That being said, there's a lot of my personal experience in the poetry, and everything, but uh, for the most part, I really want to just write pieces that invite participation, not as if you're co-writing with me, But I just want to invite participation and thought upon various topics. You know, that we might have in common. Uh, that we've considered as the zeitgeist has come and gone uh, and changed. Like in the 1980s, there was this going on. In the 1990s, there was something else going on. In the 2000s, there was something else going on. And I don't even, yeah, I think that's about as far as I want to go. I don't really want to get into what's going on in the world now because fuck. But yeah, no, I do want to be courageous in that, whatever. And so it's to invoke conversation and curiosity, but not confrontation, because after all, it is meant to be the piece that I'm working on. Just a coffee table book, something you could flip through, something that uh, wouldn't be overly offensive, uh, you know, uh, to the average person, I should say. Uh, so yeah. So the work's not finished, and that's why I really just haven't put it out there yet, and that's why I'm not talking it to death in most of my videos like I was for a while. I was like, when I come back, I'm gonna have it ready, and I'm gonna try to have it ready for a Christmas release, or whatever. It's just simply not ready. But please don't give up on me, and please don't not subscribe to my channel. As a matter of fact, it'd be kind of cool if I got more subscriptions. Not because I care about monetizing or anything like that, because whenever I do get this book together and I'm like, here I am on Amazon or whatever, it's like, it's people really just don't buy $25, $30 books. They really just try to you know even I'm like that. I'm like, if I'm looking at a book, a digital book or whatever, I look for one that's free or just a couple of bucks, because I just don't have a lot of money. So I really, you know, I'm not doing it for the sake of money. I'm doing it for the sake of connecting with other people and invoking some curious musings and conversations and just talking about things that we do talk about anyway. So why not do it in a fun collective kind of way. Anyway, that's why the title of the book is Dancing on the Lifeline, because it is about the life. And there you go. Sorry, I've went on and on and on. But yeah, also there was that earlier morose thing that I had inside of me, that everything that I wrote when I was very young was just dark. People described, people that saw some of the writing and stuff, it was like they described it as me having a dark side, and that it was like it was dark and just because I've read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe, read a lot of Lovecraft, and read a lot of Stephen King, and so I wrote short stories that were horrific, and to see that coming out of the pen of a 14-year-old was very off-putting to some people. Like, oh my God, like, so I kind of really needed to wait until the world was, till I was old enough. If I were going to write, and I am going to write some of those things, that comes after the poetry. That comes after the poetry, and that's going to be so easy to write because they're already written, really. That comes after the poetry, and that needs to come from an adult. The world is not ready for a 13 or 14-year-old to be writing about the end of the world being swallowed up, by, all the darkness. We're not, the world's not ready for that to come from. And I knew that. So it's like, if I try to put this out, they're not gonna, they're not gonna receive it from a kid, because I didn't look as a 13, 14-year-old. I did not look. I didn't look like a 14-year-old. I looked like a 10 or 11-year-old. I was small in frame and skinny, and my voice. I still have a high pitched voice for a guy my age. I'm in my 50s. I still have a high pitched voice. For a grown man. So um, yeah. So that the thing that I wanted to write, what I wanted to write, I didn't want to write children's books for children. I didn't want to stay in my childhood lane because I had all these thoughts about what I was observing, and it was coming out through my writing. And I would write short stories and pass them around to my friends, and my teachers would get them, and my teachers would freak out. I'm talking about literary teachers. I mean, they would call home uh, and hassle my mother. Not even that I was writing in class this stuff, because I wasn't. I wasn't like in class writing when I was supposed to be paying attention. That's not what I was doing. But uh, yeah, I would sign my work, and it would get passed around school, and then other teachers other would find it, and they would have a conniption. It's like, and it's like, well, what are you doing reading it anyway, Miss? One of the teachers' names, great teacher by the way, but her name was Miss Jeter, and she was the one that mostly called home this one year when I was writing these books, and it was like, oh, this you're not my demographic. I'm not writing for you. I'm a teenager, and yes, I am writing very adult type situations, romance, horror, that kind of stuff. God, you just really, and I'm not meaning to disturb you or hassle you or anything like that. It's like, well, these things are not appropriate for school. It's like, really? We're kids. We live this stuff. But it's like, we're not. Yeah, but yeah, it would disturb some of the things that I was writing, would disturb some of the adults, and so I just realized, I will eventually get around to talking about what I want to talk about. And this was in the 80s, and everybody was going on with their whole satanic panic. So if you're writing a religious horror story, short story, or something like that, then they really didn't understand that coming from a child. It was just that it's like, I'm not the one that can't separate fantasy from reality. Y'all need to chill out. Uh, it wasn't big or scandalous or anything like that, but yeah. I remember one time the assistant principal uh, at Hollywood Middle School called me in and gave me the paddle. Now I'm in what, sixth, seventh grade, and he gives me the paddle. And he gives me the paddle because the teacher was having a freak out over what I've written. And he was like, ridiculous as it sounds that you're in my office for this, uh, you know, your name's on it, and we got to do something to appease the teacher. And it's either you get the paddle or we call your mother and she gets, and it's like, uh, I'll take the paddle, So I just took the paddle. So, as a 13-year-old child, I was 13 when that occurred. I was 13 years old, and I was getting penalized for the types of writing that I was writing in my middle school, the creative writing. And that's something that the Marquis de Sade and I have in common. But I was not writing about like you know, torturous sex or anything like that. No, that came later. But I don't, I don't write pornography. I will say when I was around 14, 15 years old or something like that, I would get a hold of, like the magazines, and I'd read the forum letters and the write-ins, and, I always thought these letters were fake until it happened to me, that kind of stuff. Kids would get a hold of that stuff and read it and stuff. If you're a parent and you find that your teenager is, and actually probably happens earlier now with the internet or whatever, if you got to monitor what the content is, sure, but when you find these things out, don't have a heart attack, don't freak out, don't. but also don't ignore it. You know, it's make it a safe place to talk about. Make it a safe thing to talk about. Make it a safe place to talk about. Um, I didn't feel that. Uh, Firstly, because I was gay as fuck, and I couldn't have that honest conversation. That was not a possibility in the 1980s. As open as everybody is now about it in my family today, I could talk with my if I had my heart stomped on by a guy, I could go to my dad and I could talk to him about it. And he's in his 80s and I'm in my 50s, and I could relate to that. Like my dad, I love that motherfucker. You know, I could talk to him about that, and we'd be able to relate on the emotion. But we didn't have that conversation in the 1980s. I couldn't have that conversation. So that those types of topics were off the table, you know. So, but yeah, if you do, but just as I mentioned, if you find a stack of books in your teen's room or something like that, or don't have a heart attack, have a conversation. Okay, um, what what is your relationship with art? Do you paint? Do you draw? Do you do paint by numbers? Do you put together jigsaw puzzles? What do you do? What do you like Sudoku? What? Because art, as much as anything, is recreation, you know, and meaningful recreation. Reading and relating to reading. Uh, even watching a TV program or playing a, I guess people play RPGs now. That in itself, there's an artistry because you create your characters, or you participate in what your characters do in their adventures or whatever. I'm not a gamer, but I can relate to it. What is your relationship with art? What does it mean to your life? The topic in this video ultimately is art, and you see where all the places I went and I spoke when I started talking about art, how it can lead and open up to so many other points of conversation. That's why I thought it would be a good idea to talk about art today in this video. Please get in touch in the comments and let me know. Love and light, peace. Good night.